How you doing, Thrivers? We're going to do it a little bit different today. I am going to remain off camera. I'm going to do an audio voiceover. Don't worry, I included pictures of myself throughout, so if you're here for my mug, which I highly doubt, you'll get to see it. With that being said, I do have in the top left-hand corner like and subscribe if the information is valuable to you, but we're going to continue our series on how to do the work. And today we're going to validate our reality. But before we can do that, we have brief safety announcements. If you are a returning viewer and have already seen them, use the chapter skip function in YouTube. For new viewers, definitely recommend watching it. It'll take about a minute and 30 seconds of your time, and then we'll get right into the topic. We would like to begin today by thanking our Thriver Medallion members, our subscribers, and early adopters. Anyone revisiting this channel, having watched previous content, and brand new viewers. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and this announcement was made especially for you. Before we begin, if you want to bypass this announcement, if you've already heard it, please use the channel marker function in YouTube to do so. With that, I'll begin by saying that any persons or scenarios discussed on this channel are not based on any specific real persons or scenarios and are anecdotal only. I am not a clinician. I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, although I am a certified professional life and happiness coach, and for that reason on this channel we always theorize. We do not have the right to diagnose, and we will absolutely never theranos. With that, we'd ask you to remain seated until the end of the video. We do strive to make them short and to the point and valuable in respect for your time, especially when the stick around sign is illuminated. For most of the content on this channel, it's important to note you may only be able to assist yourself, and you'll likely want to always assist yourself before assisting others. In the likely case of an emergency, because life is not fair, please know that you always have an exit using the resources and tools you'll develop on this channel and others like it. With that, we are expecting clear skies today and wish that for you every day, regardless of what the weather says. And I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's topic. How are we doing, Thrivers? Going to do it a little bit differently today. Thank you for listening to the safety announcement, or I hope the chapter skipped option was helpful to you if you already have. We're going to talk about the next step in our 4-step healing process. Let's recognize that this list is including but not limited to. There are many things you should do to heal, but these I think are all key. And I know we talked about getting distance, and hopefully you completed the THRIVErcise associated with that on the Thrive the Matrix website. For today, we are going to look at 4 techniques for validating your experience, and those are going to include creating a trust panel, examining action and intent, so kindness should feel kind, conducting a devaluation evaluation of the relationship or relationships, and we're going to initiate or start a cognitive dissonance diary. So I think when it comes to evaluating your reality, to understand what you're up against, I listed just a few of the tools that the narcissist uses to coerce, control, and deplete your supply, and then move on to the next. They say there's one born every minute, and they do choose empaths, so to me that's encouraging. So one day, with enough healing, maybe their maladaptive behaviors will be obvious to even those in a deep REM sleep in the Matrix, while we remain red-pilled. And in fact, I know today's video has a very Matrix feel to it. Please be advised, we are still very much outside the Matrix. But some of those tactics can be projection of their toxic shame, scapegoating to establish a shame repository, isolating you, attacking you with flying monkeys, preemptive character assassination, smear campaigns, using the Darvo or deflect, attack, and reverse the victim and offender method to avoid accountability while simultaneously gaslighting so that you doubt what was clearly seen, heard, and experienced. Then comes the intermittent love bombing, where they become the person that attracted you to them in the first place, which of course can only last until the narc is disgusted with themselves for having to do it, and worse yet, disgusted because they had to do it with you. And that's no offense or insult to you. We know that's a quick process, days at most. We have that push and pull, constant idealization and devaluation, rinse and repeat, splitting. You're all good or all bad, and that changes week to week, but nothing about your behavior's changed. Peculiar, right? Breadcrumbing, so giving you just enough good days to hold on and try to forget the bad. And I think we can go on, but one thing I definitely know for sure, any person's withstanding any of these tactics, and usually people like you have endured them all, everywhere, all at once, you would have been, should have been, and probably weren't in a constant state of confusion. So with that said, you'll have a lot of work to do in this THRIVErcise, so I'm just going to quickly break it down. Part one is all about creating that trust panel, and that can include a clinician like a therapist, me or TTM life coach, and a trusted small inner circle of friends you know are supportive and believe you. And the idea is to set boundaries with them or ask what their boundaries are and joining that panel and reassuring them that despite having limited expertise, you appreciate their input, and we'll just be asking them what they would do in certain situations so that you can confirm your reality. How would they have felt? What would they have done? What would the next best action be? The THRIVErcise goes through some best practices for respecting the boundaries of those you ask. You want to make sure that you respect if they do not feel comfortable joining your trust panel, and which is their right, of course. And you also want to make sure that you establish boundaries for when you're going to ask them if it's a good time to consider a scenario and weigh in. Also important and in the form or in the THRIVErcise is making sure that you keep it about process, not personalities. Try to keep names, specific locations, and specific scenarios out to avoid conflicts of interest or to avoid the perception that you're engaging in gossip, and we know this is anything but. Otherwise, we want to anticipate they may have some dissent, so we should gain some overall consensus that our assumptions were correct, but maybe they point out something we could have done better, and that's also worth taking a look at. And if they're going to give us feedback, we should respect that. So the activity is going to have you put your own script together after an example of what it would sound like to ask someone to become part of your trust panel. And from there are some reflection questions as to why some of the items highlighted in green should be necessary parts of your request script. Make sure that when you're including them or asking them to join, that you thank them when appropriate and show your appreciation for all the support they've already provided. Acknowledge that their limited experience does not preclude them from giving you advice on what a healthy adult would do in any given situation. Get permission from someone and remove any responsibility from them based on your interpretations and actions. So they can validate you and give you advice or not responsible for what you do with that advice. Practice makes perfect. We make mistakes in implementing, and that's not on them. There's also a scenario where you're going to be asked to paraphrase it to someone in your trust panel while keeping specific people, places, and details out, and respond to their advice and some dissent they might have based on that scenario. But just remember, there'll be more than one person on your trust panel. You may only hear that dissent from one person. As long as you gain general consensus, that's what you're looking for. Remember, it's not confirmation bias. We're not looking to be right. We're looking to get an honest assessment of what we think a healthy person might have perceived, seen, experienced in that situation, felt, or what they might do about it. From there, after we build your trust panel, then we're going to move into an activity where we examine actions and motives. And that comes down to if something seems kind, but it's not, it probably isn't. And you'll be given an example, and you'll be asked to identify, do you see any abuse in the exchange? What abuse do you see? And what motivation might they have had to engage in that abuse, if there's any? If you don't think there's any, then you're going to be asked to look at the scenario for evidence of the same. We do want to definitely always have generous interpretation, give people the benefit of the doubt, and assume positive intent, but the evidence is going to point one way or the other, and we go where the evidence leads us, right? So beyond that, the last thing that you're going to be asked to do is to create a evaluation of the relationship you're now out of. And you're also going to be asked to create a cognitive dissonance. There are some very valid reasons for doing this. I can tell you one thing, when you start to see all the devaluation and all of the cognitive dissonance, all of the words not matching up to actions, it might hit you hard. It's a tough pill to swallow when you see it on paper. And there's a grieving process that comes with that. If you need any help with that, you know that you have the free Meet the Matrix initial consultation, or can schedule a session, and we'll be covering that in a future video as well. Defined, devaluation means to reduce the official value of a currency in relation to a basket of currencies. There's a human element definition to it, but I think that captures it perfectly. That's really what you're looked at, is currency. And when there's no more currency left, here comes the discard. Just remember, they probably don't have much currency either, and that may explain why you discarded them first, and if you did, congratulations. Just remember that narcs, toxic, and or controlling people use devaluation as a means to gain negative supply. So by putting someone that's empathetic and accomplished down, they feel better about themselves. That's in addition to the positive supply they get from you when you put them on a pedestal and you idealize them yourself. And then cognitive dissonance, that psychological conflict that occurs when a person holds two or more contradictory beliefs, values, or attitudes, really just means the difference between what the toxic person says and what they do. For devaluation, because narcissists need positive and negative supply, there are some debates that you might be devaluated because they're in the process of idealizing someone else. Not always the case, but a theory, and I think known to happen. And cognitive dissonance is also inevitable for those on the spectrum of narcissism, because the disorder comes with maladaptive behaviors. I'm not diagnosing anybody you're thinking of while listening to this with NPD, but just remember, action is tough for the narcissist, right? Words are cheap. They're very cheap. Again, they have no currency. They need your supply. So it's a lot easier to say something than to do something. And you're going to be asked to create a document with 2 columns. Pay attention to the do section of that paper. How much of it did they really do? And once those are completed, I would keep them somewhere secure where someone that visits isn't going to see them on the coffee table unless you don't mind. But somewhere that you can refer to them often to remind yourself that it was a horrible experience and you went through a lot. There were a lot of tactics that were used against you to make you confused about your reality and experience. Now we're going to talk about, what do you do with all this validation? You have 4 techniques now, and among them all, you should be able to have enough evidence to come to a conclusion that what you experienced was real. So in validating your reality, you'll be poised for the next skill needed to heal. And that's going to be the ability not to personalize what happened to you. Remember, you were targeted for your high value and nothing less. It is a compliment, but it's a compliment that haunts for sure, and it's a very scary one. I think the most important thing you can do after validating your experience is to reflect on it often. Keep that devaluation, evaluation, and cognitive dissonance diary, like I said, somewhere it can be easily accessed and reviewed. And I want to leave you with this thought. It's real now. You have the evidence. Don't waste it on revenge or settling the score. What you really have is a valuable deterrent and a motivator anytime you need it to hold on to your truth and to never return to toxic people and places again. You are more than enough to have to do that. I think we did some work. I don't know about you, but I hope you'll continue the journey by checking out the THRIVErcise and completing the activities I outlined. Till next time, Thrivers, when we cover how not to personalize this horrendous behavior, stay up.